Good evening, fellow Toastmasters, Madam Toastmaster. I would like to make a slight correction. It is actually coming to the Toastbusters Club that inspires me the most. And to prove that, just so to let you know, I flew over from London to Moscow overnight, and the first thing I do, after having been to head-to-head meetings the whole day, I come here to the Toastbusters Club, the club that I've spent 3 years of my life with, so I'm so glad to see you. Some of you might know that I am a Canadian. Even though I may not sound like a Canadian by my accent, I am by the passport. However, I wasn't born in Canada. I was born in Kazakhstan and then lived in Russia and St. Petersburg. And then at some point, my family and I immigrated to Canada. So let me share how my perception of Canada has changed over time. How I used to see it in the past, how I've seen it while living in Canada, and how I'm seeing it now being outside of Canada in the future. So when I first heard my parents speaking about a potential of us immigrating to Canada, I obviously started doing some research. There was no internet back then, so I could only rely on a few bits and pieces of information that I was able to get through a word of mouth from people who have had relatives or friends who have been to Canada, or some scarce resources that were actually available in the form of a printed book or a movie. And from those scarce resources, Canada sounded like some magic place, some heaven, where everyone was happy-go-lucky, where people had nothing to worry about, where everyone was fulfilling their dreams, and it was just magical, right? And I got so sold on the idea of moving to Canada and living in Canada that after some time of having looked into these resources, I couldn't think about anything else but to move in Canada. Funny thing is that it took my family 7 years to get immigration papers. My parents, both being experienced engineers, applied for the immigration papers back in 1998, and we only got the immigration papers allowing us to move to Canada as permanent residents in 2005. By that time, I've graduated high school, I've almost graduated university, the second brother was born, and just like the whole world changed, and yet I still had that picture of Canada being the magical place. So when we finally got the papers and went to Canada, I couldn't wait but to step out of the airplane and kind of witness it myself. When we arrived, my perception has changed, because all of a sudden I realized that people were not that happy and their life wasn't that magical, and everyone had to work very hard to make their living. More often than not, I would see experienced engineers or some people with PhD degree in some physics working on very low-paid jobs like gas stations, some fabrics, and other like doing other dirty jobs. And unfortunately, I had to go through that experience myself. I used to work at some dusty warehouse doing some nonsense job which was far from my dreams, and I definitely didn't feel that job fulfilling my aspirations. Over time though, I have grew up in ranks at that company. I have developed some skills that allowed me to move on with my career, and as some of you might know, it actually paid back well, because nowadays I'm employed at one of the arguably world coolest companies named Google. So I'm happy and thankful for the experience I've had. I've also built very close friends while living in Canada, and despite all the hard work that I had to put in place, I grew to love and appreciate Canada. There was one caveat to it though. Like even after I felt as if I was settled in and I had my friends and I had a nice job, it seemed to have been so far away from everything, except the United States, obviously, with Canada and the United States sharing the border, but still like everything else was far away. I still had some relatives in Kazakhstan, I had some close friends in Russia, and so this crazy idea didn't, I couldn't drop off this crazy idea off my mind that Canada might not have been the ideal place, because I would have wanted to be closer to the epicenter of things, like somewhere in Europe, I don't know. And so, guess what? Like 5 years ago, I took up on this like crazy endeavor and came to Russia, came to Moscow. Spent 5 years. Throughout this time, I've developed great connections. I've built new friendships. I've met many of you. I've had great experience overall, right? And most recently, I moved to London. My parents and friends from Canada still think that I'm crazy, that I've left Canada, the best place in the world. And frankly speaking, I now do start to see Canada as the perfect place. So I'm back on the loop. Because if you think about it, it's a perfect place to raise family, it's great social support. It's very diverse, the country made up of immigrants. Right? So I don't discount the opportunity that sometime in the future I may come back to Canada, and we'll see. I'm up on time, so thank you.